Good evening. This is a special meeting of the Town Council, a workshop with respect to the Charter Revision Commission. We'll call to order the Council's meeting first, and Madam Clerk, I'll have you call the roll, and then we will have the Charter Revision Commission call their meeting to order.
Okay, thank you. Fishbein. Laffin. Letourneau.
Here.
Marone.
Here.
Shortell. Sullivan.
Here.
Testa.
Here.
Zandri.
Here.
And Chairman Cervoni.
Here, Councilor Shortell did advise me that he had a personal conflict preventing his attendance tonight, and Councilor Laffin advised me that he had a professional conflict preventing or causing his absence tonight. With that, to the Charter Revision Commission.
Yes, as the chairman of the Charter Revision Commission, I will open this special meeting, call it to order, and Madam Clerk, if you would call a roll.
Certainly. Bob Swick. Jim Seichter. Christina Tata.
Here.
Stephen Knight.
Here.
Tom Corrigan. Mark Gingras. Jonathan Chappell. Samuel Carmody. Gina Morgenstein. Patricia Cole. And James Piscati. Thank you.
So you have 7, I presume that constitutes a quorum for your...
Yes, it would.
Okay. Before we get into business, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, before we get on to the business for which this meeting was called, we do have an addendum to the agenda, which is to address a vote that was taken on Thursday night. It was Councilor Sullivan's motion to have the Charter Revision Commission look to reduce the number of constables from 7 in Section 3, page 9. Councilor Sullivan, do you claim that motion?
Yes, I claim that motion. At this time, though, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to withdraw that motion of Section 4.3 around constables.
And I'd like to withdraw my second, Mr. Chairman.
Did you get that for the record?
I'm sorry, Councilor Sullivan, I couldn't hear you.
That's all right. Can you hear me now?
I do now.
Okay.
Different company.
I'd like to withdraw my motion of Section 4.3 dot regarding constables.
And I would like to withdraw my second.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Councilor Sullivan's motion has been withdrawn, so there is, unless somebody else in the council claims it, there is no vote to recall. Am I correct, Attorney Small?
Well, I'm just thinking you actually had a vote.
We did.
It was voted down, so I really think it's a question of whether or not he wishes to reintroduce the subject matter.
Well,
I don't know that withdrawing after the vote has actually taken place at a prior meeting. I'm not sure that that's really the best way to do it. I think the question is whether or not anyone wants to make a motion to put it back for discussion would be, sorry.
no, thank you for the
I'm sitting here
clarification.
thinking about that.
May I ask a question of the town attorney, Mr.
Please do.
Chairman? We know the vote was skewed.
Well, the vote failed even if the
Vote was
counselor...
4-4.
Right,
It would have been 4-3.
and still would have failed.
Right, still need 5.
You
Okay.
need 5, so
Thank you.
really it'd be a question of whether somebody wants to reintroduce the topic.
Good point. Thank you.
So if nobody cares to reintroduce the topic, then we'll move on from this item.
Mr. Chairman, point of information. Could you just
Mr.
explain
Mudd.
the format of tonight's meeting?
I'm getting to that. That would have been next.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
So moving on, we've covered the addendum item 3, and that is not being pursued. The format of tonight's meeting is for the council to present to the commission the recommendations the council has for items to be reviewed, the council having reviewed the draft that was presented to us in April. So what I will do is I will read to the commission the motions that were passed, and there's going to be some emails read. In addition to that, if a counselor feels the need to further explain his support of one of the referrals back, then I will give the counselor an opportunity to present argument in support of the motion. While I will not discourage the commission from responding should it choose to, I do believe that the commission will meet on June 19th, and that would probably be the optimal time for the commission to deliberate what the council has sent back to it. Does that clarify the format of tonight's meeting? Thank you. So with that, the first motion that was made and succeeded was that the Charter Revision Commission expand the Public Utilities Commission from 3 to 5 members. And additionally, another motion was to have the Charter Revision Commission explore adding 2 PUC appointees by the town council who would report to the town council. And before I look for comments from the council, I am going to read some emails that were presented on this topic. This first email is from Councilor Shortell. Dear Charter Revision Commissioners, thank you all for your time and dedication to this process. I wanted to provide context for my motion and vote on sending the PUC expansion question back to the Commission by addressing several of the arguments that I've read or heard for keeping the PUC at its current level of 3 commissioners. First, difficulty in finding qualified, experienced commissioners. I appreciate that the PUC deals with some very esoteric issues, and an individual with experience would have less of a learning curve at the outset of their appointment. However, I believe that any fair-minded, intelligent individual could serve on this commission and be successful. I would not want or expect all members of the Board of Education, for example, to be educators. Diversity makes these types of boards and commissions stronger and less prone to groupthink. Next, the town council already has oversight. In fact, the council is usually discouraged from ever actually exercising this oversight on the grounds that we should let the experts do their jobs. For example, when Councilor Fishbein was quoted as saying he simply wanted regular PUC updates on the CMAQ litigation, Vice Chair Laffin responded that you can't have 9 people in the room on top of everyone else. That's too much and not our role. It'd be overreaching to think otherwise. I trust our team. End quote. Refers to a Record Journal article of April 16th. In late 2016, an effort to veto the 3-year electric rate plan by Councilor Zandri was labeled political by Councilor Sullivan. Record Journal 12/15/16. Quote unquote, motion to veto rate plan was political. My intention is not to argue the merits of either example, but simply to show that the so-called oversight that the town council has over the PUC is, in practice, debated and controversial. A small 3-person commission ensures accountable, well-prepared commissioners. I am curious if the Charter Revision Commission feels that this is a problem elsewhere. Has the commission explored reducing the size of any of Wallingford's commission or boards on these grounds? If not, then this is really a valid argument to accept. Then is this really a valid argument to accept regarding the PUC? In my brief tenure on both the Board of Education and the Town Council, I have never felt that I could hide, especially with the number 5 to 4 votes in which 1 vote made the difference. As such, I do not believe increasing the PUC to 5 members would lead to unprepared commissioners or a dilution of their responsibility. Comparison to the size of the state's Public Utility Regulatory Authority, or PURA. It was noted that the Public Utility Regulatory Authority has only 3 commissioners. This example is historic in that it is likely the first time a practice of the state has been lauded and used to defend a practice in Wallingford. I continue to maintain that on the local level, a larger commission would be more beneficial regardless of what occurs at the state level. It should also be noted that most local PUCs have 5 members, e.g. Norwich, Bethel, New Canaan, Meriden. The expense of adding 2 additional commissioners. The cost of adding the additional PUC commissioners would be approximately $13,000, which represents 0.0002% of the general government operating budget of $61,623,032 for 2017-18. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Expanding the PUC is not a means to fix it, rather it is a way to improve it. This is in keeping with the spirit of the entire charter revision process. For example, we have an excellent town clerk, yet the commission is recommending changing the process by which the clerk is appointed. Nobody is suggesting this is broken either, but simply an improvement. Finally, I think it's worth noting that this issue has broad bipartisan support on the town council, 6 or 7 in favor, if I'm not mistaken. However, I will leave it to the other councilors to articulate their own reasons for supporting or not supporting PUC expansion. Thank you again for all of your work and for your consideration of this issue yet again. Chris Shortell, Wallingford Town Council. Next is an email from Pat Cole, a member of the Charter Revision Commission. Hi all, I have read Chris Shortell's email regarding the reasons why he is in favor of expanding the PUC from 3 members to 5. I appreciate his articulating his thought process on this issue that resulted in his motion, and I thank him for forwarding this rationale for our consideration. I wish to respond to a number of points he made, but since Chris won't be able to attend Tuesday's meeting, I am responding by email so that he will be aware of the information I am submitting for your consideration. I may not address all of them because frankly not all of the reasons given entered into my rationale for keeping our PUC as it is. Difficulty in finding qualified, experienced commissioners. What you look for in a PUC commissioner depends, I believe, on what it is they are expected to do. I think we all know that our PUC commissioners are responsible for, so I won't get into that, but not all PUCs are created equal. Using the examples Chris gave, for instance, at least 2 of the municipalities, New Canaan and Meriden, appear to be not much more than complaint boards. Meriden's PUC does not set water sewer rates. The City Council and its Finance Committee do that. And New Canaan's PUC was created for the purpose of monitoring the activities and operations of public and private utilities servicing the residents and businesses of New Canaan, and was formed for the purpose of receiving and evaluating complaints and presenting its position and concerns to appropriate local and state agencies. New Canaan doesn't even have its own water system. It is run by a company called Aquarion, which is being purchased by Eversource. Norwich is the only one of the 4 examples which owns its own electric company. More on Norwich's PUC later. The Town Council already has oversight. I do not agree that the Council is discouraged from performing its oversight function. There is a big difference between oversight and micromanaging, and wanting to know basically everything that's going on all the time is more than oversight. Making a motion to veto proposed rate changes based on no new information, no data, no analysis, no evidence that the PUC made an incorrect or inappropriate decision, nothing other than not wanting commissioners to have a rate increase, is not oversight. The PUC does in fact meet with the Council both in public and executive session, and needs the Council's approval on various issues, including the budget, bid waivers, and projects such as the peaking plants. That's oversight. A small 3-person commission ensures accountable, well-prepared commissioners. My only comment on this is to answer Chris' question as to, has the commission explored reducing the size of any of Wallingford's commissions or boards on these grounds? From my perspective, and I am speaking only for myself, we found no problems with any boards or commissions, including PUC, as currently constituted, and that's why we didn't make any changes. I have not heard a good, solid answer as to why 5 is necessarily better than 3. And comparisons to the other 5-member P&Z and ZBA made by some others, not Chris, are apples to oranges. Those bodies can only make decisions based on zoning regulations, and there is no local oversight or veto ability of their decisions. Anyone aggrieved by a decision of one of these bodies must pursue a complaint in Superior Court. Comparison to the size of the state's Public Utility Regulatory Authority. That was interesting to note, but not a prime reason for my decision to vote in favor of keeping the PUC as is. Chris cited 4 municipalities that have 5-person PUCs: Bethel, Meriden, New Canaan, and Norwich. As mentioned above, New Canaan's commission monitors the activities and operations of public and private utilities and receives and evaluates complaints. Bethel actually has only 2 PUC commissioners. The other 3 commission members are the first selectman and 2 other selectmen. So that's not a good comparison. Also, as noted above, Meriden's PUC does not even set water sewer rates. The city council and its finance committee do that. So it's not really clear what they do. Again, Norwich is really the only comparable municipality in that it owns its own electric company. Its board also oversees, unclear to me how, gas utility service in the town. However, currently Norwich does not have a 5-member PUC. Its chairman and vice chairman resigned on May 1st in the fallout from the CMEC Kentucky Derby debacle, which resulted in ethics complaints against Norwich's mayor, PUC commissioners, and others. Just as an aside, none of Wallingford's commissioners or other officials went to any of those CMEC-sponsored junkets, each of which cost in the hundreds of thousands of dollars and were billed as team-building retreats, although no actual work was ever done. So we should be very proud of the quality of our PUC commissioners and utility officials. The expense of adding 2 additional commissioners. I'll take Chris's word for the dollar amount, but adding any additional expense, even if it's $13,000 in a multi-million-dollar budget, without a clear, concrete reason for doing so is, in my view, not the right thing to do. If there were repeated failures or problems of some kind, not timely notifying the town council of actions, or not getting business done, or making poor decisions, there might be justification for increasing the bureaucracy and the expense. But I've heard of only 1 or 2 examples in the decades since the PUC was created. For me, that's just not good enough. We would be making a change for change's sake, and that's something I'm not interested in doing. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Chris's comparison to the appointment of the town clerk is off the mark. The town clerk is a vital town position and a department head requiring extensive training and certification. To leave the appointment to a council majority, which could change every 2 years, and which has happened in the not-too-distant past, caused needless turnover and expense. And there is a list of the last 5 or 6 town clerks. That process was indeed broken, and we fixed it. There is no demonstrable evidence that a 3-member PUC is broken, and I see no need to fix it. Thank you for your consideration of my comments. I look forward to our meeting tomorrow. Pat Cole. And last of the email correspondence to be read is from Councilor Laffin. I also will not be attending this meeting due to long scheduled conflicts, and while I will respect the chairman's strong discouragement on further deliberation of this topic, as tempting as it is, I do feel it is important to respond to a partial quote of mine taken from the Record Journal as cited by Councilor Shortell in his email. The full quote begins with the words, but was not cited. I don't have a problem with it as of yet, end quote. And then continues as cited in the email, quote, you can't have 9 people in the room on top of everybody else. That's too much and not our role. It'd be overreaching to think otherwise. I trust our team, end quote. However, the quote as cited in the email inserts a period after team, signifying the end of the thought, but the quote actually continues, quote, and we're included when it's necessary to be, period, end quote. And there is a link to the article in this email. First, my comment was a direct response to a specific issue, not a comment of chastisement of the process or an opinion opposing the process. Secondly, the comment with the original opening expresses a disagreement at that particular stage in the discussion of that one specific issue, not in general or across the board. The very nature of this issue revolved around frequent meetings regarding incremental briefings and strategic discussions over pending litigation. A step-by-step progress report of information which was constantly evolving was not necessary for me to continue to consider options for both our budgetary approval and our overseeing role, which is exercised through veto power over a taken action. The accumulated information and summaries we would later receive, in addition to the answers to questions, more than sufficed and saved a tremendous amount of time reporting information that was in a state of flux prior and actually at some level continued to be. Briefed with incomplete information about pending or possible outcomes at our level over several briefings would not be time well spent. Thirdly, my concluding and originally not cited words indicated that we are and had been satisfactorily included in the process, and there was no reason to believe we would be left out of this specific issue, and there was no need for concern. Further, the addition of 2 additional members to the PUC does not affect this preferred distribution of succinct information compared with the option of an overabundance of unnecessary step-by-step details that were not developed enough to be what I would consider final nor important for our oversight or requested budgetary approvals. If it's best to share, read, and report on these emails for the sake of transparency, I fully support that rather than raise any possible concerns. Also note, this email originally was sent to my personal address, and I have responded from my council email address, where I prefer to keep all business for the very purpose of maintaining transparency and possible FOI requests. If everyone could update their address book as such, please do so, and thank you. Have a great meeting, everybody. Tom Laffin. All right. Having gone through all the correspondence directed at this issue, are there any counselors who want to comment further? Councilor Morone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just take the opportunity to say a couple of words about this issue. I would just like to point out to the commission that there was a majority of both parties, I believe, that were in support of this, of taking a look at this issue again. This is certainly not a political issue. I don't believe that the council gets enough information on a daily basis, and we don't have enough background to make these decisions to appropriately veto motions of the PUC. So, for me to step in and say that I think that this rate change is inappropriate, what possible evidence or background could I have to that other than information given to me by the 3 members? So on a 3-member board, you're always going to have a sort of a 2-to-1 conflict. So the council, quite frankly, doesn't have enough information to make these decisions. And I think an expansion of the panel could potentially add some other points of view. To me, this is not about keeping anything the same or making changes. It's just about transparency and open government. And I think that having more people involved in the process would just lead to greater transparency. And that's pretty much where I stand on it. Thank you very much. And also, Mr. Chairman, if you give me a second, I really appreciate the work the commission did, and I trust whatever you come up with will be the right decision on this too. I just like you to take another look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Morone. Councilor Sullivan.
Yeah, I'll be the first one to tell you I don't go to the PUC meetings that often. I know we have good people on the PUC. There's no doubt about it. I can only use the business model I use in my full-time job, which is if you're going to increase the number in the group, make sure you're bringing qualified people in, because they can only enhance the good work that the current group is doing. And it's very hard to find people who have a background in public utility and management and all of the different requirements that go along with it. I'm certainly open to moving to 5 because I find in my own business that groups of 5 work pretty well together. And sure, there's still going to be a majority of those that vote for an item, and there'll be a minority that don't get their way, but so it goes. That's democracy. But I will say this, I'm not opposed to moving to 5. I don't like the idea of alternates. I'd rather have 5 permanent members. I think alternates are great if they're there at every meeting and they're ready to pinch hit, much like a Broadway actor who is sitting off the wings waiting to fill in. But if you're an alternate and you don't go to the meetings and you're not sure of what's going on, I don't know how an alternate would be able to make a good decision, even after being brought up to speed on the topic. This is a very complicated commission, probably one of the most complicated commissions to receive appointment to. You've really got to know your stuff. I'm opposed to the council making these appointments. I'd rather the mayor made these appointments and did so after almost a resume search to make sure we have the right people. It's a political appointment is not something we want on the PUC commission coming off of the council. And this is just my thought. I'd rather have the mayor do it after an interview process, checking resumes and making sure credentials are all in order before we make any recommendations. It's a big job, a big job. I know when Mr. Beaumont and George are here from the PUC, it takes a while to understand exactly what they're talking about because they deal with it on a day-to-day basis. And I don't think anyone up here is an expert, and we don't claim to be experts on what they do. And sometimes it's difficult to understand exactly what they're talking about. We have the opportunity certainly to call them and do our due diligence, but it's still a very difficult topic to get a handle on. There's so many restrictions and requirements and processes on what they do. So I'm not opposed to going to 5. Again, that is not a knock on the people we currently have on the PUC. I think they're all good people, well qualified, and do a great job. And I think to use Mr. Nunn's absence is not really an excuse to moving the number to 5. I think if we can find 5 qualified people, in addition to the 3, 2 qualified people, that can only enhance what the current committee does. I think that's a plus. So again, I'm not opposed to going to 5. I'd like to listen to more discussion from the members of the Charter Revision Commission as well as my colleagues here on the council. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Letourneau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, all, and thank you for the job you've done on this so far, and great work. I look at this, the PUC, over a number of years. I've been a counselor, this is my 10th year. I've attended many of the PUC meetings, and even before I was elected, I attended PUC meetings, and I was just interested in the working of the electric division, primarily. I know it covers water, sewer, and electric, but electric is the biggest side for this commission to look at. And I've seen it change over the years. It's gotten more complicated, and historically, it has gotten more complicated. When the Wallingford Electric Division first started, it was known as the Borough Electric. It was just a small entity, and it's grown over the number of years to become quite the utility. And that's why I am for adding more members to the commission. I also would like to see five commissioners. It's gotten very complicated. You know, we used to produce our own electricity. We had our own power plant. So what they had to deal with down there, they had to deal with the maintenance of the power plant, how much coal to buy, how much oil to buy. And then we took it to the next level. We stopped producing our own electricity, and we started buying it in the open market. And then, over the past couple of years, we got into the hedging of our electric, which is a whole nother entity, very complicated, extremely complicated. And I just think having more eyes on this it's going to be better for the town. I think, you know, putting a couple of more people on there, and it's gonna, it'll, who knows? Down the road, they could take one of the commissioners and say, you know, I think, who's interested in just taking care of the hedging part of the electric? And let them sink their teeth into that and become experts on that. And I think that's where it's going to eventually go to, because it is getting more complicated. As time goes on and it's rapid, it's a major undertaking. And I think it's time. It is just time. It's an evolution of the electric in the utilities, because it's not only the electric, like I said, it's water, sewer. That's gotten complicated over time too. There's a lot more regulations now on the water sewer side. So, you know, I don't look at it as just adding people on or you know, growing it for the sake of growing it. I look at it as it's bringing us into the next level for this commission. And, you know, years ago, I don't even know when it started, you know, what they had for a commission. I don't know if it was a one-person, two-person commission. I don't know. But I think it's time. And like I said, in years to come, shortly years to come, it's going to get very complicated. So I think adding more people to it is going to help. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Testa.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you all for the work you put into this. I apologize for not being here at the meeting we had previously. I'm curious about this particular issue. You may have answered this in the past. When you considered the number of members of the PUC, was there a vote, and could you tell me what the result of that was?
The first vote we took, the decision was unanimous not to raise the number.
Okay. The first, was there more than one?
Well, the first time we considered it was one of the charges that you gave us.
Okay.
And so when we discussed it, I could actually tell you which meeting that is.
No, that's not necessary. I was just curious if it was a unanimous.
But it was unanimous. I checked that
Okay.
out today.
All right, thank you. I'm all set for now.
Thank you. I don't think there's any other comment from the council. If the commission would like to respond, I'll certainly give you that opportunity. And I would just like to note for the record that Mr. Piscati did walk in while I was reading the great prose that was emailed prior to this meeting.
Let me go back and just, Mr. Seiter has pointed out that there were two votes on this issue. The first one, and Jim, the first one was when we discussed the item as a charge item. And if I'm not mistaken, that was a unanimous vote at that time. Our last meeting was, you're referring to our last meeting, where we did have a discussion, and I put it to a straw vote as to whether we wanted to. We had a few minutes of discussion, and we would put it to a vote as to whether or not we wanted to have a full discussion. Because obviously, if there wasn't a majority to have a full discussion, then I thought that would be the end of it. Let me just see if I can find the result. Jim, do you recall the result of that last vote? Okay, I've got it. I'm sorry. I found it, Jim. On that straw poll, there were 10 members present, and 6 voted to not extend the discussion, and 4 voted to extend the discussion. But it was not, and please understand that this was not a vote to make a decision. It was a vote whether we wanted just to continue the discussion. And so I don't think you necessarily can take it as a indication of how we would have ultimately voted for the raising the number of commissioners from 3 to wherever 5. But it was whether or not we thought that it was worthy of further consideration. And at the time, it was a 6-4 vote not to do so.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other comments from the commission on this particular issue? Okay, thank you. Moving on, the next item that's being referred back to you is to reconsider the 15-day time frame for the council to veto a PUC action, that it start when the council is noticed of the action, not when the action occurs. That was Councilor Fishbein's motion. It was seconded by Councilor Letourneau. Any comments from the council on that? Any response from the commission for tonight's purposes? It's not compulsory. I just offer.
We seem to be in agreement that we don't have any at this time.
That's fine, thank you. And then the final referral back was that the commission look at how quickly the public gets the budget before the public hearing on the budget. And that was, again, that was Fishbein's motion, and it was seconded by Councilor Shortell. Is there any comment from the council on that? Any response from the commission?
I think just as a point of clarification, I know Councilor Fishbein isn't here tonight, but we were wondering where exactly in the charter he was referring. We did make a change stating the certain, thank you, about the budget being published. We did make a change that would say it could be in a newspaper having circulation in the town or by alternate means established by the council by ordinance. So we were under the impression that possibly stating by ordinance might cover that, but we're not, at least I'm not 100% sure if that's where he was referring to. So if he could just point us in the direction so that we can discuss that, where exactly in the charter he was referring, that would be great.
So his motion was not specific to the section of the charter. And my apologies, I mean, perhaps if you could tell me where your change
I can help you out. If you wish. I'm
Please.
looking
Please.
in the section on finance and taxation, section 4, duties of the council on the budget.
Oh, it's in the sentence before that. So, Vice Chairman Tata, if you read from the top of section 4, skip the first sentence, the council shall cause sufficient copies of said estimates to be made available for general distribution to the office of the town clerk and at least 5 days prior to the public hearing.
So it looks like it's in regards to the 5 days that potentially he would want it to be.
Well, I think you can read it that I think you can read it that the 5 days is referring to the publication in the newspaper, as opposed to specifically saying that the copies would be available in the town clerk's office at least 5 days. So I think that's the language that he's looking for you to take a look at, as I understand it.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Just a clarification, I believe the budget was online a day or two after it was issued. So it's not clear to me exactly what we're referring to here. It was available to anyone online. I thought that was advocated quite strenuously in order to make sure everyone had access to it.
That it was. Click a link, see the budget. And I believe that's all the motion we have, all the business we have tonight. Before I call for a motion to adjourn, I do want to say that I know all of you have worked long, hard, and studiously, and that you deliberated conscientiously on the referrals that we initially made to you and beyond that. And I do think you've done a great job. I think that the proposed revised charter that was presented to us before this last leg of the process was excellent work on your parts. And personally, I'm very grateful for all of your work, and you should be commended. And whatever you do after this is up to you. But thank you very much. And Councilor Testa?
Is it appropriate to just ask a question about their charter? Just so I can understand something?
Can you give me a hint?
Well, no, yeah. No, I wanted to ask, yeah, I know we already had our opportunity to question them, and today was just to consider. But I was, you don't have to answer, but I noticed they totally changed the section on removal of officials. And I was curious if that was based on a law.
It's based on law.
Okay, I just wanted
No
that
power to
clarification.
remove.
Okay, thank you. How easy was that?
That was easy. Boom. With that, I believe a motion to adjourn is appropriate.
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All of those in favor of adjourning the council meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I hear none.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the Charter Revision Commission meeting.
Second?
And all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No? Oh, okay, that's a unanimous vote of the commission.